And here we go. Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Kageyama, and I'd like to welcome everyone here to the Cancer Conquering Community, our weekly Thursday meeting at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific for those people on the West Coast. Uh, we meet every Thursday, and every Thursday we uh, usually have a speaker, and today we are just thrilled, absolutely thrilled and honored to have none other than Chip Littlejohn. And I'm not going to steal any of his thunder. Chip, please introduce yourself and share with us a little bit about who you are. And thank you so much for doing this.
Mark, thank you for creating this gathering, where people can get together and share their ideas. And it is an amazing group of people that assembles around this cause. And many of them, the what structure of this call, right before we start the recording, everybody has just introduced themselves briefly. And so my smorgasbords of thoughts this morning will be partially influenced, hopefully, by the people that are on the call and the things that happened over the few moments right before I came and jumped on the call. Um, Interesting how many Taekwondo connections there are in this morning's call. Uh, I just met at the lake the son of the guy that taught me Taekwondo when my kids were little. And he is from a mountain tribe in Laos. When he was a little kid, the war was raging. And the Laotians stepped up to help the Americans as best they could, uh, with the promise that someday we'd make sure that they were safe. And I was in special forces back then in the Air Force. And I had my own team, and it came time for me to go over to Vietnam, and the evacuation of Saigon occurred. And the Air Force came to me and said, "We don't need guys like you anymore. Do you want to go home?" Well, interestingly enough, that mountain tribe, the Mongs, Hmong, the Mongs, were not rescued right away, at least not a bunch of them. Some were. I know some that got out early, but they started disappearing from the families. And all of a sudden, one day, my buddy's dad came to him, and in the middle of the night, they just started walking towards Thailand. And they got to the Mekong River, I guess, and huge river. They made bamboo things to swim the river. And the men and boys went out and pulled the younger people and the women across the river. And there were snipers along the river that were supposed to not let anybody get across. When they got across, they were, you know, met by the Thais who were going to rescue them and took every worldly possession in turn for rescuing them. This sounded like some of the battles you're in, right? The promise that didn't quite come at the time you thought it would. But what happened was they put him in a refugee camp, which he described as a basketball court with 30 families in it. 3 years later, someone walked in the door and said, "Today's your day," went out and got on an airliner and landed in Fresno. I wound up, being one of his students. My kids were his students. His son, I met this morning at the lake. I do still coach water skiers, but the message to get from Taekwondo is the simple statement, at least in the classes that I was in, that was said before each and every class. And that was recognize a potentially dangerous situation. You're beginning to get connections to the call here, right? Avoid if possible. Defend if necessary. Say that again. Recognize a potentially dangerous situation. avoid if possible, defend if necessary. Pretty good philosophy to apply to the group here today. Being alive in today's world is a dangerous situation. I asked Mark, maybe to give me just a little something to get me started. And what he said was, why were older generations less likely to have this problem than modern generations? One of the groups that we work with a lot are kids who fail to develop properly. Actually shares the same common origin as the problem that causes this group to gather. My little note back to Mark was, the humans are being killed by snacks, conveniences, and pollution. What is it that's causing all this? Snacks, modern conveniences, and pollution. The things we're eating aren't clean. Every convenience that we create comes with its own set of problems. All of us are sitting here on Wi-Fi, frying our brains in order to teach our brains by being on the call. We accept a certain amount of this risk. And then we strive to come up with ways to not be hurt so badly. Well, what are the tools that we have to not be hurt so badly? As a species, we do pretty well because we have big brains and opposing thumbs. We have a fairly long lifespan, so we've got some time to learn. We're able to observe each other. We socialize. And we begin to form groups to deal with problems. This is a group to share quite a diverse and I would say brilliant group of people who have all engaged with this problem, entered into the battle space, I guess you would say. The term that we seem to use is battling. I prefer outsmarting. Wouldn't you rather just outsmart it than battle it? Wouldn't you like to figure out what the maybe the weaknesses, what it depends on, what the affliction depends on, and then deny it what it needs? And do that in such a way that instead of hurting people to help them, which is that's the most common, that's the standard of care now. I call it desperate care because you wouldn't do it if you weren't desperate. Instead, to find a way to help people to help them. That simple thought and several careers merging together, I guess, and just being there to see it happening, making friends with some of the key players. One of the most important people I've met in this battle was trained at Duke University at the Comprehensive Cancer Research Center. He is a computer-assisted drug designer and a biochemist. His job there, working with developing chemotherapy drugs, two of the main people got Nobel Prizes for their drugs. Anybody ever used Taxol or been around Taxol here? How does Taxol work? You don't think of a cell as being something that has a skeleton, but it does. It has a cytoplasmic skeleton. And Taxol makes that stiff and brittle so that it cannot divide. Monroe Wall got a Nobel Prize for coming up with Taxol at Duke University. Unfortunately, the good cells and the bad cells can't divide anymore. So old cells continue being used long after they should have. That leads to the concept of senescent cells. Senescent just means old, or zombie cells. Should be dead, but they're not. we're still using old cells that should have been discarded. The other key person who was making discoveries there was working with camptothecin and camptothecin analogs. Her name, she was already in her 80s at the time, was Gertrude Elion. Interesting detail about that particular prescription drug. It was perfect in lab animals. You could give that program a lab animal with a tumor and they could solve it with camptothecin. Unfortunately, when they went into human trials, we have a protein that none of the lab animals had. It's called circulating human albumin. I always like to point out that you know more than you think you do. And if I speak a little Greek and Latin, forget about it. Everybody knows that eggs are white and yellow components. We got the yolk and we got the white. Well, the white is what? It's albumin. So you know that word. It's in us, circulating albumin is a protein that we need, but when it gets exposed to that particular chemotherapy drug, it turns into something that plugs kidneys. It's still in use today, but it is risky to your kidneys. So you have to have a nephrologist to help watch over your kidneys. So the smallest component of a kidney is a nephron. The smallest component of a lung is an alveoli. Just so happens that the doctor for kidneys is named after the nephron, a nephrologist. So you know more than you think you know about that stuff, and somebody has to watch out. Well, what was the job of the biochemist? The computer-assisted drug designer. They needed this to happen quicker. By modeling it on a computer, he could show something and the likely outcomes in a matter of weeks or months that would normally take years or decades in human trials. Let's just say you got that job and you were supposed to figure out how to make chemo hurt you less or radiation hurt you less. And you were doing that all day long. Wouldn't you kind of feel like somebody gave you a wooden handled shovel and asked you to dig a huge trench? It's such a hard job, but you have time because you're sitting there running that shovel. And so you're thinking, okay, right now, the products that I'm working on have to hurt people to help them. My job is to hurt them less to help them. And then all of a sudden the idea pops into your mind. Well, what if we could just make it a wash? What if it didn't hurt you to help you? That would be better. So now he's thinking about that. And then the big idea comes one day. What if we could help you to help you? What if we could ask your immune system to double check its work instead of wiping it out in the first battleground? And it could suddenly start making correct decisions again. The two parts of the immune system that we rely on are inside of every cell that's making a new copy of itself. Every new copy is double checked. So those are called tumor suppressing genes, P21, P27, P51, P53, some of the tumor suppressing genes. If they get fooled, that's one of the components of getting in trouble. But we have backup. We have all the white blood cells. The white blood cells, they could catch it. Remember the T cells, the NK cells, the macrophages? The macrophage is the general of the immune cells. It's the one that helps make the proper numbers and the decisions for the other cells. What kind of a fight they're going to put up, how much risk they're going to take to get into this battle. And so that group of cells should see it, recognize that it's not right, mark it, remember it, kill it, and eat it. That process is essentially called apoptosis, spelled apoptosis, but said apoptosis. And the cool thing is it cleans up its own mess. The opposite, if you kill something, if you burn it or poison it, you have necrosis. Necro being dead, you just killed something. Now you have a mess that has to be dealt with by your body. Resorb, walled off, somehow that's got to be cleaned up. So one of the cool things about us running in our normal functions is that all this happens automatically and it cleans up its own messes. So what I'm approaching here is the nature of what we're up against and why we don't get it usually. In the last 48 hours, I've begun learning about bats. Bats don't get tumors. They have one additional degree of protection. Instead of having one P53, one P53 gene, they have two P53 genes. So the chances of both of them going wrong is apparently very obscure, almost never happens. Think about how bats live, what risk they have in their lives. And yet they live longer than almost every other little creature, 30, 40 years normal lifespan in the wild for a bat. So essentially, what has gotten me here, the vehicle I rode to your meeting on, was this thought from this biochemist when he thought, what could I do to help these people to help them instead of hurting them to help them? And essentially, I followed up his lifetime of answers to that question. You have on the call with you and in your own minds because you've become students of what's going on. You've learned all the dirty words, right? Whether you're one of our medical professionals or you're a person who's been afflicted and just figuring out you learn all the dirty words that you wish you didn't have to know. But there's big ideas and philosophies, and no one has all the answers. The medical side is getting better. They're getting more careful as well. They do have people trying to figure out how not to hurt you as much. But on the natural side, it's essentially, what can we do to help you to help you? If you're using that or if you're representing that kind of a concept, common people take those ideas and run with them. Learned this a long time ago. So I'm also a compounding pharmacy tech. Mostly I make bioidentical hormones for women. I was the guy behind the wall making it, and the pharmacist was talking to them. And I would deliver them and talk to them at night to learn more. And I began to understand the nature of kind of our medical treatments and some of the little indicators that pop up. Anybody ever wonder why there is a doctor, a diagnosis, a prescription, a pharmacist, medical device? Why does there have to be so many professionals in that chain? It's plain and simply to protect you from the possible ill effects that come along with that kind of thinking. That's why all those layers of protection are there. It's risky business. Recognize a potentially dangerous situation. Avoid if possible. That's big. That middle statement's pretty big. Avoid if possible, stay clean, and defend if necessary. Most of the people here on this call are in the fight. We're in the defend if necessary area. My Taekwondo black belt's son came to see me today. What do we do together? He showed up this morning with a brand new water ski boat. Not a brand new one, but new to him. He picked up something by observing me. He sees that I live longer, happier, stronger. Participating in that sport. When you drive yourself to do something and you love to do it, fascinated by living things. I bet you I'm talking to the choir here. Everybody here is fascinated by living things and what makes us more alive. Is that right? And essentially, that's what we're turning to. I'm asking you to consider, along with or instead of, fascinated by living things, what makes us more alive. Wouldn't you like to do for sure, at least, all the good things that help you to help you? Wouldn't you for sure want to incorporate that into your life? You know, Kelly introduced herself, one of the first introductions, Kelly Callahan. I got to meet her through a guy that has two Purple Hearts. He went to Vietnam. I got trained to go and didn't go. What a huge difference. So Ray Schuland, Shu we call him, showed up in Dallas, Texas one day with Kelly Callahan. And I was so happy to see Kelly. I didn't know much about her yet. I'm happier and happier the more I know about her. But her connection to this affliction is imaging. Kelly can tell a woman if she's got trouble in her breast long before almost any other imaging capability because temperatures start to change. And she can catch that temperature change. Before Kelly was discovered by Shu's a recruiter for the concept. Why don't we help you to help you? She could give the image to the woman who is in trouble. And then, they'd go find whatever they could to get help. But the simple idea that was brought to Kelly's practice was, hey, there's ideas that help you to help you. You don't have to be a doctor, a diagnosis, a prescription, a pharmacist, a medical device in order to represent the healthy things. Think about this time. How much of your time do you actually spend in with, the doc, the oncologist? Oncologist called one of us away already. I kind of admire that because the guy called, right? You usually have to track them down and maybe you get moments to be with them. You don't get to stop and talk. What is provided in a gathering like this? The chance to stop and think with people that are highly aware, in it with you, been through it with lots of people. That's who's on the call with us today. All of a sudden, Kelly had this simple idea that there are things that people can do to basically bring control back within their own realm. Instead of handing yourself in a shoebox to someone and saying, do whatever you have to. I understand I'm circling the drain, spare no cost. An emergency room nurse whose kids were in the same classes as my kids in Christian school, got kicked out of Christian school, by the way, because my son needed so much help to read, they couldn't give that much instruction time to one kid. He's coming home pretty soon, Friday. His dream was to read at normal speaking speed. He would make things up rather than because he's embarrassed that he couldn't read fast. Now he can read at normal speaking speed. Turned out he was brilliant. Just had that problem. Wound up being salutatorian of his class. His co-salutatorian wound up being Miss America when she was only 17 years old, did pageants with his sister. 17-years old, got to be Miss America from our little town, Scottsbluff, Nebraska. I will tell you this, even in a beauty pageant, there is no substitute for brute intelligence. Kelly Callahan, Dr. Gary, George's, some of you that I know, brute intelligence, looking at this in a different way, seeing the normal ways, accepting that, get the goodie out of that. What do we get for our dollars? Great diagnostics, right? Spectacular diagnostics. I think we've taken a few flyers on how to deal with it that are dangerous. but we've got them. And my suggestion, uh, this is from experience with my wife, not myself, although my entire face was removed in the year 2000, chemically removed because there was stuff growing on it. So I guess I've had my run in too. The idea was to hold those things in reserve in case we got desperate, not to reject them, but to hold them in reserve and to do every right thing we could think of and see if we could take control again, to see if we could get control of something that had slipped out of control. What are we trying to do here? Take control of the uncontrollable. Outsmart the problem. Think like it does. Figure out what it needs. It needs sugar. How's a PET scan work? Positron emission tomography. You don't eat for a few hours, they fill you with glucose marked with a radioactive fluoride. What eats it first? Tumor eats it first. Causes it to light up on the screen. We just shined a light on that sucker. Now we know where to go get it. We shine lights on it in different ways. We shine lights on it so that our immune system can see it. That's the natural side. Maybe that's enough, maybe it isn't, but it gives you one more thing. Then you continue with the great diagnostics and find out. The goal would be, and I'm sure for each of you, the goal is to go back to the same people that told you were in trouble, somebody like Kelly, and have them say, can't find it. Kelly, all of a sudden, isn't just someone who does imaging. She carries within her mind, and several of us here do now, ideas that are powerful enough to outsmart the thing so that you may use both, either, however you want to do it. The goal being to go back one day and have the same person who said you're in trouble say, I can't see it. It's gone. That's a pretty lofty goal, but my phone's full of it. And your minds are now full of the idea. So Kelly, all of a sudden, has people come in, get an image, take an idea away, come back and get a clean image. She is part of a building where everybody in the building is an exotic healthcare practitioner of one kind or another. Everybody has joined Kelly because Kelly came across a huge idea. I think I have some other notes. I didn't go the direction I thought I was going to go, but I think that's pretty important for this group. Let me see if I got anything else. Hmm. Hmm. First thing that I read, one of the things that I work with allows us to have, it's actually used for athletics, but I discovered when I used it, and it works for athletics. It's the reason it works for my water skiers. We first took a shot of this. It looks like a 5-hour energy shot, but it's healthy stuff again. And when we went out, all of a sudden things weren't so rushed. It felt like we had total access to our mental and physical acuity and agility so that it didn't feel so rushed. It was amazing. You know how when you get rushed, your vision goes to tunnel vision? If you're driving in a storm, you get to the point you can only see this big. You don't, but if you're in control in your sport or in a situation, boy, this is great for this group, great for this moment. Your vision opens up. You're no longer locked into some little thing, and that's all you can see. You got to turn everything to see it. Instead, you open it up and you see everything. That's what I want for you guys. Didn't know why that one jumped out at me. I guess that's why. Here's another little piece of message. I was telling about the Christian school and yeah, my son now is he's a coal mine boss. Huge. red-bearded, massive, incredibly, ridiculously strong human being. He's the kind of guy that if there was trouble in a bar and a fight broke out and he walked into it, everybody would quit in case he was on the other side. It's, it's that kind of, it's like you look at him and you say, where would I hit this guy? There's no place to hit him to hurt him. But he has grown up with this kind of thinking. And every now and then he'll drop a thought in like that. So 99.9% of your time, you are on your own. When your doc comes to you and maybe everything that he's done isn't working, and he says, you're on your own. Or you walk out and you have to choose. Several people mentioned they're doing every right thing they know. You're in teachable moments like no one, well, half of us get into those teachable moments now. And you start doing every right thing at once. What if you just simply did? And you all know a lot more than you're using. I know you do. If you just reminded yourself of the good stuff you know, that's kind of what Gary does when he does his talks. He reminds you of the stuff you already know and reminds you to do it so that you have to be consistency over time, frequency during the day, putting combos together. These are the powerful ideas. The greatest result comes with consistency over time of doing right things. What if you did every right thing you already know at once? What if whatever's in my mind remained a mystery, but you just took the concept of doing every right thing and doing it a bit more strictly? Maybe you're kind of sort of avoiding sugar, but you heard about the PET scan today. And you say, well, I'm going to be stricter about that because I know it's a problem. Those cells, you've probably heard, are metabolically distressed. Well, what do you mean by metabolically distressed? Well, one thing is their mitochondria don't work right. Well, what does a mitochondria do? It's the little powerhouse of the cell, right? It makes all the energy. Well, if that's not working, how do they make power? Fermentation. That's all they got left. They need sugar and yeast. What if we come in and kill the yeast and deny the sugar? That makes it more difficult for them, right? So Kelly gets to have two sets of imaging now, the befores and the afters, and just has an idea in her head that allows her to help create the after. Doesn't have to send them to somewhere else, just reveals to them there's another way of thinking. Sometimes that's powerful enough to make the difference. Let me see if there's anything else. Hygiene helmets and seatbelts. Well, let's avoid the problem, right? All these things are basically hygiene. These are things you do every day. It's not like you drop a bomb on the problem. There isn't a place to go bomb cancer. You have to do it through hygiene. It's the things you do every day. It's those right things that you do every day. Choose those wisely. Actually spoke at the legislature when they were considering the original seatbelt belt law in Nebraska because my wife and I were going down the interstate and a huge Bambi-like gorgeous buck jumped right out in front of us. We were in a little Pinto wagon. It was fun, a little force feed, all kinds of fun. We were kids, well, sort of 30s. And that was the last inch that the Pinto never went any farther and the buck deer never went any farther. That was it right there. That was the end of both of them. But we happened to have our seatbelts on. Prevented, getting hurt a lot worse. The concepts we have here. Recognize a potentially dangerous situation. Avoid if possible. Defend if necessary. If you have to lash out, if you actually get in that spot where you have to use the things that Lahia knows, pretty much unlimited what you do at that point. You're circling the drain. You're being threatened in such a way. I remember the emergency room nurse said, people bring them in, circling the drain, and all of a sudden, Nothing's off the table. Spare no expense. Well, how did they get in this shape in the first place? There was nothing being done to take care of them before they showed up in the emergency room that night in collapse. I hesitate to tell you this next one, but for some reason I'm going to have to count on divine guidance. It could be an error. If you don't like this thought, please, it's a bit much. One of the things that I watched for and learned, being trained to be a special forces soldier, was what's going on, with what if I actually go do this? And it dawned on me one day, typical soldier on the battlefield is fighting for what? The guy next to him and a chance to go home. He didn't understand what's going on in the world stage that's caused all this trouble. He didn't understand the nuances of religion that have caused the problems, whatever it is. He's fighting for the guy next to him or the woman next to him. If it's a woman, fights even harder maybe, and a chance to go home. But what did they teach? And this is really important. This is really the nature of the Green Berets. I got to go through some of their schools. I was Air Force, but I was always working with Army guys. Had one chance to go out with SEALs. I didn't understand that SEALs are assassins. You don't want to be around a SEAL when he's working. I was a voice on a radio. I was forward air control for the airborne assault. That's what I was. But it dawned on me that the Green Berets were being taught to come in and help build communities, to make friends, win people, provide food, get clean water, to help the people that were in the distress zone. That's what they were there for. But the legend is different. And the legend, what they're famous for isn't that. It's not dramatic enough to be that. It's when war breaks out. And what do? What's the god-awful part of war? And this is the brutal statement. Kill everybody. And let God sort the good ones from the bad ones. Years and years later, fairly recently, the bigger part of that statement finally dawned on me. Guess what? If you're God and you're up there and the people are coming up and you're sorting the good ones from the bad ones, the good ones and the bad ones are coming from both sides. They're just kids fighting for a chance to go home, fighting for the guy next to them. That's who's actually doing it. And there's good ones and bad ones on both sides. I'm going to put a little help into this thought. One of the things that we can do, thinking as we do, is to clear the human mind. When you hurt a brain in any way, I don't care if it's a disease, a hit on the head, a drug, a recreational drug, lack of oxygen when you're being born, lack of oxygen someplace along the way, it always gives up its functions in a predictable order. The hierarchy of function of the brain, when it's being hurt, what's lost first? And you've all seen it because you've seen somebody get drunk. Inhibition and judgment. Filters are gone. I submit to you that everybody on planet Earth is slightly polluted, and our filters, our judgment, isn't at its peak performance. I believe that if we can find a way to excrete or avoid the pollution, man's inhumanity to man will reduce. Our inhibition, our judgment, our filters will be better. After that, fine motor skills, short-term memory, speech, those things go away. The things that go away last. Those just get worse and worse and worse. What's the last two things that the brain gives up? They are long-term memory. You've probably heard the joke. How can a memory so short go back so far? It's not funny if you have old timers affliction or if you're in old timers clinic and the people in there, maybe their entire personality is gone. So what's the very, very last thing our brains give up? Organ function. It'll keep reorganizing itself, using its plasticity to organize things in such a way that it keeps the body going for hope that it could come back. Fortunately, our neurons in our brains are constantly reaching out to make contact with each other again, exactly as we're doing on this call right now. Exactly as we're doing. If we succeed and we manage to make connections between each other and we pass these big ideas between us, that's so powerful. Exact same things happen in our brain. I think I've used all my time. Gary's Gary's got to go, and I hate to lose Gary. I promise I won't say anything interesting after you're gone, Gary. Okay, that's it. I'm done, Mark. Can I hand it back to you, please? I hope something was useful in there.
Dr. Gary, you have a question or a comment?
Oh, wow. What a treat. Um, God bless you, Chip, for your wisdom. You're thriving under the influence of great health and nutrition and your service to this country. And I was just, your insights inspires everybody. And it's so nice to hear. My question is, and I know that you were very careful about being respectful to the things that you've shared in your life, like Taekwondo and healthy living, and help all those on this call, which are a collection of brilliant cancer survivors, doctors, and healthcare professionals, and just common people like us. Um, the importance of bringing single ingredient whole foods and the importance of synergistic symbiosis of supplementation that you take. In other words, help those of us
Yep.
to
Okay,
understand.
I got a great answer for you, and
Yeah.
I get these questions, of course, and I have these thoughts myself. So, Dr. Gary, here's a cool way of thinking about this, and I think a lot of you are going to know it. I got any fishermen on the group who raise your hand if you're a fisherman? Do you fish in such a way that some of the fish have been stocked into the streams of the ponds where you're working? Have you ever caught a fish that was stocked? I used to run a trout farm. When I got out of the military, I I always joked. I said I ran a 250,000 head livestock operation all by myself. People say, "Well, how the heck did you do that?" And I said, "Well, rainbows, brooks, and browns." And they said, "You were on drugs?" I said, "No, those are species of trout." But the trout that were in my ponds that I raised from eggs scoured their ponds down to bare dirt. They ate out of a bag. I'm throwing them fish food, fish pellets out of a bag. I made the mistake of eating one of them. They were all went to to be stocked into streams in Colorado is where they mostly went. I ate one of them. That was foolish. What does a farm raised trout taste like? White, mushy, tasteless meat. If you've ever caught one, you know it. Well, that was apparently just stocked. This is the answer to your question, Dr. Gary. Next week, I thought, well, I'm going to get one of the ones that far away in the wild where he's eating freshwater shrimp and snails and insects and everything around him is green and lush. And I got one of those and it still looked like a trout. They both looked like a trout. Oh my gosh, his flesh was pink and firm and tasty. And here's your answer. I thought in my mind at that moment, oh my, that's happening to us. We're eating out of the bag. That's my answer.
Thank you.
You can use any of that stuff if you want it. I kind of creative. That's my nature, and I don't do the same call twice. Robin's on. We've done 20 years of calls together. I'm sure she wonders where the, but anyway, I look for ways to talk to you so that it shocks you into thinking, into considering. A woman once said, I felt like I was decomposing while I was still alive. What powerful languaging. And I know each of you have your languaging. I watch for it and I grab it when I can and I use it. And I offer it to the rest of you to use because I know you're representing a different way of thinking.
Anybody else have a question or a comment or uh, anything that they want to add? So I have something. Let's go back to the original premise. Uh, and more of your thoughts on, when we were growing up, and, we're all different ages and things like that. But, most of us, when I was growing up, I didn't even know what cancer was because nobody had it. I mean,
So
I think,
we weren't hurt as bad as young. And I'm sorry because I said your question, then I didn't answer it. We weren't hurt as bad as young. When I was a kid, 1 in 50,000 kids became autistic. Now it's 1 in 20 or 30. If you're military overseas, you come back, it's 1 in 22. If you have a male offspring, going to go to autistic. Essentially, it's mercury dissolving the tubulin on the insulation of the nerves in the brain. Everybody knows the word myelin because that's what goes wrong in MS. But on a single cell, we're just exposed to all these pollutants. And when we were younger, we had a period of our lives when we weren't exposed as much. I fear for the young ones coming up now. I watch their behaviors and I watch their filters at work, and I'm thinking they're hurt worse than we are. We're hurt worse than the ones right in front of us were. It is possible to stop and think and outsmart it, though. And that's what I'm representing to you today. So that the way you've been hurt by pollutant, you can start peeing poison. That's what the biochemist, one of the main things he learned. So I finally did answer your question, I hope, Mark. I'm sorry I didn't. I take, a lot of files open in the brain, and I never know which one's going to come to the top. Sorry.
no, I just am fascinated by that. And I'll share my experiences as a kid. When I was a kid, my family had a plant nursery in West Los Angeles, and for as kids, we're talking, from 3 to probably 7 years old. We had a plant nursery, and it lasted for 60 years, and it closed a year ago in June. And so we used it as a playground during the weekends. And for kids, it was like a dream because there was open spaces. We could run down the aisles, and there was a big dirt pile that we used for canning plants, from small 4-inch pots to gallons to 5 gallons to 15 gallons to 24-inch boxes. And so we used to, how many kids wouldn't want a big mountain of dirt, clean, so what we thought was clean dirt to play in, And so we played army and hide and seek, and I mean it was, we just had fun. I mean, there were kids running around. But at the same time, on the weekends, the workers would be spraying pesticides. And back then, the regulations are what they are today. I mean, in fact, we used to have it in the shed and it used to stink to high heaven. And it was like, the instructions that we had were don't go in there because it smells bad. But that wasn't the real danger. The real danger was what was actually there and what was actually radiating from this shed. So we would be playing in the nursery while the workers would be spraying all the plants with all these harsh pesticides. And our instructions as kids were, just don't get hit by the spray. But as we've come to find out now, and I know this is resonating with you, Chip, because I know you know a lot about pesticides. You know, and I personally think that's why my family has been so affected by cancer, is because of those pesticides that we used to play around as kids, when we were 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, running around every weekend. I mean, we used to just love it. It was just a lot of fun. And so we thought. And, without knowing the dangers of these pesticides years later, plus, we had high wires, uh, uh, emitting EMF rays. And so there was, a lot of things that were there, plus the dirt pile that we had so much fun in. They used to drop on the weekends also. They used to drop a fresh load of dirt. And the scary thing about it is this soil used to steam and it used to have a real bad chemical smell. And our instructions for that was wait till the steam goes away and the smell goes away and you could play in it. So we did. We'd play in it for hours and hours and hours, we spent a lot of time there. But in my opinion, and I don't know, we don't know exactly the effects of certain things in our lifetimes, but I think all these things that we're playing in as kids, had a direct effect on myself. I had stage 4 prostate, bone, and lung cancer, stage 4. My brother had prostate surgery. He had his prostate removed. My sister, who used to always also play with us there, she passed away about 5 or 6 years ago now, and her cancer was really bad. And she was probably, we were all shocked when she got cancer because we felt that she was the healthiest person in our family. I mean, she was diligent about everything, about her diet, about her water, about filtering the air. And so, looking back, the common thread in our family was where we played. And and so I was just wanting your thoughts on all of that, Chip. And then we'll go to George's he has a question.
Well, it accumulates for a lifetime, and it's very difficult to leave. You have to find something that will gather it up and usher it out. Otherwise, it gets sequestered in your brains, your bones, your organs, your fat. And to be able to find a way to significantly reduce that is a lot of the brilliance that I get to represent. And you're right. I come from agriculture as well. A lot of those things that you played with were acetylcholinesterase inhibitors. A nerve, when it is a switch that's on, acetylcholine is in place. The enzyme that opens the switch again is called acetylcholinesterase. A lot of those chemicals would have prevented the enzyme. And what happens is you think about it, you put it on a field, and 4 weeks later, a beetle comes along, takes a bite of a plant, and dies. It's because he cannot relax his muscles and he suffocates. Every muscle contracts at once. We actually work in the receptor site, the alpha 7 nicotinide acetylcholine receptor site in the receiving side of the synapse is one of the areas where we work. And we do it in such a way that we slightly change the shape so that the perception of misery, the static coming down a nerve, isn't allowed to go through the switch. The useful messages go through. And so those are just, that kind of stuff is absolutely fascinating to me. And that bats have figured a way around tumors. That's brilliant. Stuff like that. I got to go pretty quick, but I'm going to do one more call. I love you guys. I've gotten to meet several of you one on one. What an amazing group. I mean, you think you, I don't know. I think maybe you know who you're around with each other. It's an amazing amount of wisdom that's in here. Really amazing. Georges, what do you got?
Well, first of all, thank you for all your input. I actually loved your metaphor about if there's nothing else to do, you gotta defend yourself. And I like that because most people, and maybe in the beginning of my battle, my 10-year battle, I was there. I wasn't taking action. I was just hoping that my oncologist will win the war for me. And so I was like that's a dangerous angle to be on because you have to take action. You have to defend yourself. And you mentioned it, they barely have minutes to talk to you. There's no like a one-on-one thing that you can build a relationship. It's just come into last week it was an amazing presentation with the doctor. But I love that defend yourself because it is really we have to take action. You mentioned about, the bomb or one, let's say one, there's only really for many people one weapon, which is chemo and radio. But you could actually form an arsenal of holistic stuff to help with that. And we'll talk a little bit about next week. The other thing that I got from Mark saying, describing your childhood, one of the reasons we get dirty and I love to go camping is to ground myself. Without subconsciously, kids are really looking for that connection that electromagnetism the earth provides to us. And none of us spend enough time out there. Probably Chip does because he water skis, but if you are not into, let's say, physical activity, going out for runs or whatever, you must go out. It is very antidepressant to take your sunglasses out and receive some of that sun through your eyes, fresh air, and more importantly, just if you find the spots where you can take your shoes off and ground yourself for a little while, you will not have pains in your body. There's no areas that are stuck with energies because we are grounding ourselves all the time. If we can do that, buy yourself a patch. They still have them out today. You could be sitting on your desk and grounding yourself with your, barefoot. So, but the bottom line, great. I love your analogies. I love the way you presented all your stuff. A lot to learn from you, man. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Chip. Do you have any final thought that you want to leave us with?
I'm so happy I get to go skiing tonight. I remember when I was a little kid, 9 years old, and I struggled to learn, and I got on the water and I looked down, I was standing on the water. I couldn't believe you could stand on the water by moving. And now I can still barefoot at 75 years old. And so I love it. And I get to work with people that are uh, great athletes. I've never been a great athlete, but nobody has more fun than me. And I hope some of the fun comes through when I'm talking to you guys. I want you to enjoy being together and admire each other. I certainly admire you and the work I am not an organizer. I have created an organization, but it's not me that thinks that way. People like Mark that put in the effort to pull something like this together and organize it. People like Gary that pull a bunch of thoughts together and turn it into a program that, isn't just a smorgasbord of thoughts. Um, but anyway, I got to go. Thank you so much for having me, you guys.
Thank you so much, Chip. We really appreciate you. We're going to shut off the recording right now. So thank you everyone for joining us here at the Cancer Conquering Community, and we hope to see you next week.